You are listening to Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hey everyone, Colton here, listening to my podcast Here Before, Here Now. I know it's been a while, but the summer weeks and the summer months, things can get kind of sleepy, booking guests and things like that. So I don't even remember what my last episode was about, but I am very happy today to bring to you a woman who I have known for quite some time now, at least over a decade. She is a trailblazer in the field of journalism for Native Americans, and I had known her since I was in college. She would be facilitating workshops to help more Native American students get into the field of broadcasting. And she's had her own story, which is pretty incredible. And I can't wait to get into it. Everyone, meet my guest, Patty Talahongva. Thank you for being here, Patty.
Hi, Colton. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's Esquili.
So it's amazing how I've known you for so long now. I mean, I think the first time I met you was at a workshop trying to get more Native American students, people of color, into the field. And here we are several years later. I mean, you're doing your thing, about to write your own book. And here I am doing what I had wanted to do back then. So it's pretty incredible how our journeys have kind of just done our own things.
Well, you went to ASU, Walter Cronkite School of Broadcasting, and wonderful. You graduated, and to watch you in your career, first in radio and now in television, moving to New Mexico and coming back. So it's great. It's great to see you in the community and to have your face on the air. So, and I know that's motivating a lot of young people out there who may have not considered a career in broadcasting before actually seeing somebody like you on television.
I remember when I was first getting into this, I don't remember who brought up your name, but I was telling them that I wanted to get into journalism and broadcasting, and someone said, "Oh, you should reach out to Patty Talahongva. She's a producer. She's worked for the network, and she used to be here at a local TV station." And lo and behold, here we are. I mean, you used to work at this very station, Channel 3, several years ago, right?
We lovingly called it News Channel Me,
Okay.
Arizona's dysfunctional family. But I mean, that's all in good faith or humor and such. But yes, and it's crazy. You go back, and I've had a wonderful career in broadcast news, and worked at Channel 3 for a long time when it was an ABC affiliate, and then we had that huge network shuffle, and then we ended up becoming, and I still say we, an independent station. So covering the news back in those days was just a different world than it is today. And I think we had more resources. I think we had more time to do more in-depth stories. And I really appreciate the time that I spent in local news, because I also worked at Channel 10, which was my first time around. It was one of the strongest CBS affiliates in the country. And back then it was known as KOOL TV, Cool News 10. And the station operator would answer the phone, "It's cool in Phoenix."
Oh, how funny.
So having that experience, and then coming to Channel 3, and then eventually returning to Channel 10. And at that point, it was also moving away from that CBS affiliation, and it ended up becoming a Fox affiliation. So, but I loved my career in broadcast news. And when I was a young girl and in college and looking around, there were no natives. There were in the local news and in the national news scene. So I did not have a national news person as a role model, but I gravitated to this. I feel like it's kind of in us to be storytellers, and we're using this new technology to continue our long tradition of oral storytelling. And even with Hopi, I'm from First Mesa. My people had broadcasters that you would refer to today as a broadcaster, who would stand on top of the kiva and give out the week or the day's news. What ceremony's coming up, who needs help with this, is there a rabbit hunt happening? So they had their own way of communication, and the person literally stood on top of the roof and broadcast. So everybody would come out of their homes and listen to that news segment.
Wow.
So they were traditionally men, but today, here we have podcasts, television newscasts, all kinds of forms of journalism. So I feel like I was born into this. And again, going back to my Hopi culture, my father was Spider Clan. And so we get our names from our father's clan, but we're matrilineal, so we follow our mother's clan. And we have what you can call prophecies. And one of them is that, and this is, these are stories that were passed down through the generations. One of those stories is that one day our world would be connected by this giant spider web in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And our people always knew the world was round because our creation story talks about how we came from the center of the earth to the surface of the earth, and we traveled around the world. So this idea of having this connection in the sky, the spider web, when TV news, and yes, I'm old enough to remember when live shots became a thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To be able to go live from whatever location. And I would think, gosh, if you could draw this imaginary line between the satellites and Earth, that might be a really messy looking spider web,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe that's what my people were talking about.
Right.
No.
Huh, okay.
What do we have
Yeah.
today, Colton, that we use every single day? We
Like-
use the World Wide Web.
Yeah, the web. Yeah, oh my gosh. Wow. Even web is in the name.
Web is in the name.
That's crazy.
How did my people know this?
Yeah.
So, and then my Hopi name is White Spider. And so I really have felt that this career, I was born into it.
Uh-huh.
Like I couldn't do anything else
Right.
but be a journalist and to tell stories from our native perspective. So, yeah, there's more, but
That's pretty amazing, though. Like, as you were growing up, did you have anyone that you felt you could look up to in terms of someone who's been in this career that's helped pave your way, or did you have to forge your own path?
Well, it's funny, when I looked at network news, I really liked Jessica Savage. And she was a correspondent, a national correspondent for the White House. She was quite interesting. She has, a couple of books out. She died at a young age. It was quite tragic. But I just liked her way of telling a story, of presenting the information. And then as I got into my career, I discovered the Native American Journalist Association. And in that group, I met Conroy Chino. And he is an Acoma Pueblo man, and he was a longtime reporter and anchor in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then he went to Los Angeles, covered the Rodney King riots. And so the two of us started working within NAJA to build the broadcast side, the television broadcast side, because radio has always been pretty strong in our Native communities.
Mm-hmm.
But together, we started putting together the training program for Native youth. And we started mentoring young people to become broadcasters, whether that's an anchor, a reporter, a videographer, a producer. There's so many, and there's so many positions in a newsroom,
Right.
satellite coordination. I mean, you name it. There's all kinds. And today, website manager. So all of these different careers that are available for our Native youth.
And right now, you're working on a book. Talk
Oh,
about that
gosh.
experience.
Okay.
When you were talking to me about this a few weeks ago, when you were on the show talking about an event that you helped facilitate regarding pottery that belonged to families in your community, First Mesa, that was on display, or I guess in preservative areas in a northeastern college, right? You talked
Right.
to me about this book that you're writing. I'm so interested about it. Tell me more about what you want to accomplish with it.
This is, I love that at this stage of my career, I'm doing something so new. I've never written a book, and we're bona fide. We have an agent, we have a book deal. Our book will be published by Legacy Lit, which is an imprint of Hachette Books, and it will come out in the fall of 2026. And I have a co-writer, Heather Cabot, and she and I are just like where we have a long connection together without knowing each other. So Heather grew up in Phoenix and graduated from another school, which was just a few miles away from the Phoenix Indian School. So Colton, I went to the Phoenix Indian School. I am a boarding school survivor. And what's crazy in this world of, full circle moments, when I went to Phoenix Indian as a junior in high school, I got my very first job as a reporter when I was attending Phoenix Indian. And I worked, I got paid for my stories. I worked for the Teen Gazette, which was a part of the Phoenix Gazette, which was the newspaper that would publish at 5 o'clock
Oh, yeah.
in Phoenix.
Remember that.
And then the Arizona Republic would publish in the morning, and then on weekends, the Gazette would publish on Saturdays, and the Republic would publish on Sundays. So in the Saturday edition, there was a section called the Teen Gazette, and so I would turn in stories about Phoenix Indian for the Teen Gazette. So this full circle moment I'm talking about is that I'm here at Phoenix Indian. Heather's going to high school at a different, public school not too far away. She had no knowledge of the Indian School history or why Indian School Road was named Indian School Road. And fast forward decades later, she's doing research about missing and murdered Indigenous women and comes across the history of the boarding schools, finds out Phoenix Indian exists, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never knew this. So Heather contacted me, and I met her at the Steele Indian School Park and gave her a tour, and we talked. And from that conversation, and the reason why I was so open to meeting her is that she also went into broadcasting. And she was a network correspondent, an anchor for ABC News, and she has 3 books under her belt. She's just a really wonderful person. So in our friendship and talking, and she was thinking about doing like a long magazine format story on boarding school, we both just kind of said, why don't we write a book? Because the story is much, much larger.
Right.
And so the book is about my family's history at the Phoenix Indian School. And from me going backwards to my maternal side, there are more than 40 relatives we've identified who went to Phoenix Indian. And on my father's side, the same thing. And then all the other relatives who went to other boarding schools in other states or went to Catholic boarding schools. So we're looking at the policies that created this system and the outcomes. And I know, there's a lot of interest in boarding school right now, and a lot of books are being written about boarding school. I'm writing from a first-person experience, what happened at boarding school. And yes, when people say, well, what was it like, or what was the history of the boarding school, I ask them to focus on a certain decade, because what happened in 1900 is very different than what was happening in 1940 to 1970 to 1990 even. And so things changed. There's a lot of really horrific stories about boarding school for some people, but there's also some really good things that happened. And one of the good things that happened for me is that I became a journalist. That's where I started my career. So there's so much. But yes, the book is coming out. We have an Instagram account, and I welcome everybody to follow us. And it's just simply at Indian School Road. And so you can go on Instagram and watch our postings there. And we are fast and furiously writing. The manuscript is due next year, early.
Okay. I thought you were going to say yesterday.
Well, it's kind of, in news, you have like, oh, okay, you get the story in the morning and it's due at 4 o'clock or whatever. But in this case, we still have our benchmarks of, how we have to meet our word count and our chapters. And then the editing process, we meet with our editor once a month already. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's been very different, a different way to write. And it's a narrative nonfiction.
Okay.
So it's not a memoir. It's not first person, me. It's going to read like a novel. And in many cases, that's a harder way to write. But we really want to tell a story and bring people into what happened at that at Phoenix Indian School in particular, but what these policies were in place at boarding schools across the country, and then how Christian-run boarding schools followed that same pattern.
Do you find that people are shocked, or at least
all the time,
not really understanding the boarding school story for the U.S.? Yeah,
all the time. People can't, people cannot believe that this happened, and
what were some of those
wonder,
things that happened?
Well, first of all, the kids being taken away, being forcibly removed, and the parents being punished if they wouldn't let their kids go off. But visitors to Alcatraz Island every day are going to hear about the 19 Hopi men who were put in prison there. And their only crime was that they resisted the government's efforts to take their kids away. And what crime is that? What parent today would put up with a government agents coming in and forcibly removing those kids? And we know some of the kids were taken at such a young age, and kept at these boarding schools for so long. When they finally graduated and were able to, start their own life, they didn't know who to go back to. They had lost all memory of family, of connection. And so, they might know what tribe they're from, but what's there for them? They're complete strangers. So they move into these cities, and then they marry non-native people and they go on with their lives, but their grandchildren are the ones coming back and saying, who am I? My grandfather was full-blooded, name your tribe, and yet we know nothing about who we are as a tribal person, our connection, all of that's been broken. And it's sad.
Yeah. And all of it started to assimilate Native Americans into white society, mainstream America.
And that's an important note to mention, because even though they had the word school in there, education was the last thing on their minds. These schools were not intended to get us ready to go to college so that we could graduate and become our own business owners, doctors or lawyers. I mean, name your profession. We were not encouraged and not expected to go to college. Think about all the thousands of brilliant minds that were wasted. Because you look at our indigenous cultures, you look at, Hopi, and the buildings they put up, thousands of years ago are still standing. That's a Hopi ingenuity. Look at our ability to follow the sun and the moon and to have this knowledge of the solar system. That's science. Our medicines that we have. So we're not ignorant people. We're very intelligent people. But when European Americans got here, they did not recognize what they were seeing, and they did not respect what they were seeing. So this idea of manifest destiny really did a number on us.
Yeah.
And we're still fighting to get back.
It was a story I did when I was a reporter and anchor in Albuquerque about this one school, the Native American Community Academy, and they were using the old facility of what was a boarding school there, Albuquerque boarding school. And, the people who I spoke with were like, yes, this is such a sad time for our people's history, the erasure of cultural identity. But we are trying to take this narrative back and create and foster a sense of Native pride with these students who are there now using that same facility that didn't celebrate their culture beforehand. Are we seeing that shift now at other places?
I love it, yes. And it's about darn time. And that it's really important to take back your power and to change that narrative. So by doing that, every time they have guests who come in, they're able to educate them about the history of that building and then say, look what we're doing now. So I have a great example of that, because in my last position, one of my last positions, I was hired as the community development manager, and we actually took one of the 3 remaining buildings from the Phoenix Indian School, and it's now located inside Steele Indian School Park. The grounds have been turned into a city park. And the city, of course, owns the property now. They did not have the funds to renovate what used to be the elementary school, and then it was turned into the music building. And so I worked with the nonprofit Native American Connections and worked on the effort to renovate that building. And we turned it into the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center. And I love that. I love that because we were able to change that narrative. And we took a building that was, as an elementary school, again, those kids were not being groomed to go to college. We were able to take that building and turn it into a space where the community could come back and celebrate high school graduations, college graduations.
Wow.
And we had several that first year, several families whose grandparents went to Phoenix Indian. And now they were coming back to that building and they were celebrating their grandchildren's graduations from college. And it was wonderful. It was like we just took that government building and we turned the narrative on its head and said, this is what we're doing now. This is how we're using this space. And it was wonderful. And then, fast forward, I ended up working for Indian Country Today, and we started the national newscast in my living room.
Oh, wow.
Because it was during the pandemic and
Sure.
everybody was working from home. But when we needed a studio and ASU was not open yet, we looked around and I said, let's go back to the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center.
Yeah.
And so then we were broadcasting from that building that was put up again by the government to hold our people down. And now we're doing a national broadcast from that same building.
Wow.
And I love it. And that is sacred ground, that Indian school property. And those buildings have the spirits and the essence of all those kids who came to school there. And you have to honor that. The Memorial Hall that's open, it's renovated. The city operates that building, and they rent it out. That was put up to honor the boys who served in World War I. And it's one of 2 monuments or memorials in the state of Arizona specifically dedicated to World War I veterans. And people don't know this, we weren't even citizens in World War I.
Right. I think I saw a post a couple of months ago that said 100 years ago today is when Native Americans became citizens of the United States.
Yes,
So,
that was in June, yes.
Yeah, it was back in June, so a few weeks ago. So, like, to think about that, I mean, it just shows like how far Native Americans have come, in terms of like
In a short time.
yeah, in a short time, absolutely.
And just this past Friday and Saturday, I think it was Friday, was the anniversary of the tribes in Arizona, their right to vote. And we've only had that right for a few decades. And so, yes, it's important history.
Wow. So you've got this book. It's coming up in 2026, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And you're also just super busy on so many other projects. You told me you're going to Alaska or have been traveling in and out of Alaska for a documentary that you're working on too.
I'm working on a documentary, yes. Can't say too much about that one right now, but that's a long-term project. And yes, it's again, some really great opportunities at this stage of my career, which I love. I did all the local news and craziness. I love election night. I know it's coming up.
Yeah.
I thrive on election night because there's so much happening. I've covered presidential elections since Reagan got elected. So, I'm old. I've got a little bit of dust on me, and but I love this profession, and I love being at the front seat of history and seeing how we're recording that, and then measuring it, going, back in time and saying, what was it like in the last whatever election and how are we doing today? And, it's interesting. I like politics. I like the world, the news that's happening, where is the Native space in that?
Right.
And what's the Native angle? How are we being a part of our society? And I love seeing all the engagement now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm like shocked at how many channels and how many voices are out there now than there were when I was in high school looking in to get into this field.
Sure.
So that brings me to my next question. If you could tell yourself 3 things that you could tell your younger self, let's say late teens, early 20s, about this field or even life, what would you tell yourself?
Wow. What would I tell myself? Give yourself a break. You especially in television news, people think it's all wonderful. It's challenging. It's a lot of work, and then you're working with a team, and you've got to find ways to work together because like any job, you're going to have people that you don't quite get along with. But how do you make that work? Because at the end of the day, you all have to work together to produce a story. When even though it's your face on that story, it's not just you doing the story. There's a lot of people who've touched that story, who've had a part in it, and so working with all of those people. So I would say give myself a break because sometimes you can get so hard on yourself about I didn't do this right or I didn't whatever. Give yourself a break because there's going to be lots of time to make up and get it better, right?
Sure.
Because we all make mistakes when we're starting out. And so I would say that. I would say definitely really cherish every day because you are recording that history. You are in the front, and your job is very important, and you have a lot of responsibility to get the story as accurate as possible. Journalism is one of the few careers protected by the U.S. Constitution. And with that comes that great responsibility to come to work every day and to get it right. Because, and especially today in the attacks on the media, an understanding what is the media.
Right.
You know, anybody on the, you know, with a microphone and a camera is not a journalist. So what are your journalistic ethics telling you about how to govern your day, how to go about your day, and how to put that story together? So I think that's, you know, something to keep in mind as well. And a third, you know, stay healthy.
Yeah.
This is a demanding job.
It really is.
So you got to learn how to eat right. You know, party, but not too much, because you got to party, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's the best part too. After covering a big forest fire or whatever, you know, you're on, or you know, everybody gets together, and that's also those bonding times when you're thrown into some crazy situation. And believe me, in my career, I have had so many crazy situations, and we come out and say, how do we live through that?
Right. It's a lot. Yeah.
So, but we did, and so hey, let's celebrate. So, you know, have fun and take care of yourself. Take your vitamins, drink your water, your electrolytes. You know, eat right, exercise, and stay healthy, because you've got to be on the top of your game.
Wow. Well, Patty, thank you so much for being on my show. I appreciate your time,
you.
your expertise. I can't wait to read the book, and also the other project that you're keeping pretty quiet about.
Well, me too, right?
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for listening to another episode of Here Before, Here Now. You can stream us online. Also, get us wherever your podcasts are. Also, if you want to hear a guest on, send me some ideas, because I'm always looking forward to that. Colton.Schoen@azfamily.com. Until next time.
You are listening to Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.